This is Moving Forward with Dr. Diana Clark. Welcome back to Moving Forward Talk. I am your host, Dr. Clark. This is a space where we share stories of struggle, growth, and healing with hopes to encourage others who may be walking similar seasons in life. This week we have a very special guest, Miss Araceli Gomez. She is a licensed clinical social worker and a private practice owner of Brain and Soul Wellness LLC. She is an expert in grief and trauma counseling, a community advocate, and supports efforts in suicide prevention. She curtails the annual Grief, Wellness, and Retreat, Reset to Wellness. She understands grief and trauma on a personal level, and her style of equipping clients with tools makes her an effective fighter with observable changes in the lives of her clients. Welcome, Ms. Gomez. It's such a pleasure to have you joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Clark.
So, in our conversation today, we will talk honestly about grief and emotional pain, and even moments when the weight of our loss can lead to thoughts of giving up. And more importantly, how healing is still possible. This conversation may be sensitive for some viewers, but it is also an important conversation about hope and healing. If you or someone you know, someone you love, have ever struggled silently or is currently struggling silently, this conversation is for you. Ms. Gomez, first, I do want to start off by asking you to explain or describe grief.
Grief is the process, that decision that is difficult to adjust to. It can mean a loss of a pet, a loss of a job, loss of your country. So it's the process of losing something, someone important, and what that feeling process begins.
Thank you. What loss made grief become personal for you?
That one started at 3 years old. I lost my birth mom. She had just had my little brother. She birthed him. There's four of us. And so after she had him, she had to go back into the hospital and she sustained a fall and she was not able to recover from that. So that made grief very personal, very early in life. That was my foundation for life.
Was there ever a time when it felt especially overwhelming?
Yes. I am 43 now, and I would say that for the past 40 years, grief has been very difficult, overwhelming, like you say. Um, Not only did I start out at 3 years old losing my mom, at 8 years old, my maternal grandmother, so her mom, and my dad somehow agreed. That's how I understand it, for me to come to the United States. So I was originally born in Mexico, lived there with my mom and my dad. But at 8 years old, I was taken that's how I feel still. So I was taken from my dad, my home country. Um, and then I've had subsequent losses after that. So it's been a series of losses from coming to the United States. I didn't know the language. I didn't know this family that was taking me because my maternal family lived in the States while my dad's family lived in Mexico. So at 12 years old, I was placed in foster care. So not only do I now have no family, I'm estranged from my maternal family. And then just losses. It continued after that. I had a miscarriage. I've lost my mother-in-law. I've lost my foster mom. I've lost my dad. I've lost pets, colleagues to suicide. I've lost jobs. And so it's been a process for 40 years, I feel, until now.
Been a journey.
Quite a journey in grief, I would say.
Yeah. And during that journey, what have helped you personally begin moving forward while still honoring your loss?
So, what has helped me personally, and I heard another guest of yours mention COVID time. And so during that time, I began really the work of introspection. And what I mean by that is looking inward and starting to think about what is life for me? How do I want to think about life? Um, do I just want to keep thinking that I'm going to be next that's gone or that other loved ones are going to be gone? Like, I can't just keep thinking about death all the time. So during that time, besides introspection, I found grief yoga. And so I understood yoga in the sense of just different poses and exercise with it, but I didn't know that it had other themes. Now I know that you can do some for like lower back pain or headaches and things like that. But grief yoga specifically helped because the instructors are able to mention grief, mention loss, and provide a reassurance while you're doing the different poses. And some of the poses literally you're moving to move the pain that you can't speak or that you're not discussing with anybody or even with yourself. And so doing that and listening to the instructor lead you was really helpful during that time.
So, experiencing loss from age 3, and you mentioned a series of loss, right? Would you say that that experience or that journey helped pave your path into your current career?
Absolutely. And mostly from that little girl's perspective, because I I feel or I can say that I've chosen to be an expert in grief and trauma because I didn't get the honesty at 3 years old. I and you can argue, well, you were three, what could you really remember? But what I do remember is that my mom, I was no longer having access to my mom that I knew, right? I didn't know where she went. I didn't know where she was because there was no language given to me to say, Araceli, your mom died. What I did see is that my dad brought in a woman whom became my stepmom. But again, that wasn't verbalized either, right? And then they began having kids, and that was a whole whirlwind for my head. And so I I perceive that my grandmother did not resolve her grief. And so I was the only girl. So I had three brothers and I was the only girl. So in her efforts to get my mom back, I feel like that I was her access to that. But what she didn't realize in that process for me is that my dad was my dad. And I still had a parent that I could be with. And so, and in my home country, that's all I knew. I knew the dirts of Mexico. And, he had a little store. And I remember going there and getting candy after school. Like, that's what I remember. But I lost that access. So I, my perception in terms of practicing counseling with grief and trauma is that we have to resolve grief because if we don't, then we make choices for other people that impact them
Yeah. And
in
what
their
role would
journey.
you say forgiveness plays in your healing journey?
Whew, that's a heavy one. It has taken years, years. I think even until 3 years ago. because I had resented her for that many years because it's one thing to, yes, we can look at me coming to the States as, you know, its own journey. I have access to things I wouldn't have in Mexico, but I didn't know that. So being brought here without my dad and without my brothers or my half siblings, and then being estranged from my family, I was alone. And she ended up dying, I think, while I was in foster care. And so I was upset for a long time because during COVID I began the work of introspection. So I really hadn't worked through, okay, what do you really want to resolve around being here? You're here now, like you went to the schools, you got the degrees, you're here and you have your own business in grief and trauma counseling. But there was something that Dr. Cindy Trim said in a podcast herself. I don't know if you're familiar with her. Dr. Cindy Trim, she's like a evangelist and visionary, and she said God people, needs foreigners to come to the countries because there's no one like you there.
Mm.
That was so healing to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, okay, I'll let it go, God. I'll
Because
let it go. I'm not going to be mad at her anymore.
purpose is being, then purpose starting to be fulfilled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So now, in your role, in your current capacity, what is it like to suddenly find yourself on the other side of the one experiencing grief instead of guiding someone through it?
Well, it's been a journey for 40 years. But 3 years ago, I lost my brother, one of my brothers that my mom adopted, my foster mom. And that was unexpected. And it's even having gone through a series of losses, it's still another person you love. So it's not like you get used to grieving. It's the same process with that loss all over again.
Right.
So I appreciate your question because what I did find myself doing was overworking. I just started like to have so many appointments on my books. Just I was in denial. I didn't want to think about his death. I was not okay with him not being here, and I was bargaining. I was feeling really guilty about the last day that I saw him. And so I told my sister, her name is Tiffany, also someone or a sister that my mom adopted. And I said, I'm really tired. And she's like, do you think that you're overworking so that you don't think about Austin? And I said, yes. I didn't like that call out because I'm usually the one calling her out on grief. So it's hard. Like I went into default settings of, okay, we're in denial and bargaining and we're just going to work. But I still showed up. Yeah.
Denial is protection, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if in those moments when you show up for others, you're showing up for yourself. Yeah.
Most likely. Probably so. Yeah.
Why is it important to have honest conversation about grief?
It's important because it's a real life thing. We're here,
Mhm.
but we're not immortal. Physically, we're not immortal. So life and death coexist. And, we get so happy when a child is born, when a baby comes into the world,
Mhm.
and yet we're so silent when they leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Just the thing that separates us from literal animals is having communication, voice,
Mhm.
words.
Yeah.
We have that for a reason. And so it kind of goes back to when I wasn't told that my mom had died. I was left to my own imagination, but really just loneliness.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find yourself, and you touched on that a little bit, but do you find yourself sometimes reliving some of your grief while trying to help others process theirs? And if so, how do you manage it or healthily cope?
That's that's a powerful question. Um, because I have so many losses, I'm able to relate a lot. And you read it in my bio, me having lived the experience, I'm able to hear nuances in words and phrases. I'm able to look at the body, like, well, it's telehealth, so I'm able to look from where we're looking at now. But even so, like the look away or the putting the head down or just like wanting to hold back tears. And so it I'm able to know a little bit more than what just someone that might be listening to someone talk about their grief. But when it hits, like, let's say a brother, that one is new for me. That one is fresh. And so I I make a mental note of this is not your experience. It's not your loss today. We're gonna focus on what you're listening with them. Um, I have a life coach, and she told me that when things really resonate with her, she would put something like hard under her underarm to kind of know that ouch, that hurts, but I'm not gonna allow that to come into the session. So I've used that to help me separate because I mean I might end up crying too. I haven't done it yet, but
You
we
haven't
need
done
someone to be the helper.
oh, you haven't done it
Yeah.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, as a clinician, how do you explain grief to people who are experiencing it for the first time?
This is going to sound very odd, but it's my favorite because it's their first loss. And so we're able to validate their experience and we're able to normalize a lot of what they're experiencing. Where, because you're hearing all kinds of messages. Oh, they had a good life, or, well, you don't know what their death protected them from. Nobody wants to hear that in the beginning, right? And
Right.
so when they first come into to session to talk about their loved one for the first time, we're able to work through all those placated statements and remind them that their journey is their own and it's very unique to them because they're the ones that had the relationship. If it's the loss of a loved one or a transition with a job or losing a loved one to suicide, it's a nuanced loss there. And so it's I guess I feel privileged to listen and to say, no, what you're feeling is normal.
Yeah.
I hear you saying you want to be with them too. Yeah, it's normal to feel that. So that because I guess because I love teaching, and so I think that being able to teach them about the stages of grief, the denial, that my brain does not want to understand that this is true, so it's going to avoid it as much as possible, right? We're going to say things to ourselves like, oh, I just haven't talked to them in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Oh,
Mhm.
they're on vacation or they're at work still. We're able to be really creative telling ourselves
Mhm.
those things so that we don't believe it. And then there's bargaining. What if or the why, right? And all that bargaining is doing is creating guilt. But what that also is doing, bargain is the biggest stage that keeps us from feeling the pain. Denials, yeah, we can avoid, but bargaining specifically is
Yeah.
everything but feeling. I am not, everything's here, right? what if I had done this? What if I had said that? What if I had spent more time with them, me with my brother? What if I had believed him when he said that he wasn't going to be here? You know, like that's what I wasn't feeling the loss. I was just thinking through it. And anger is part of loss, and depression,
Yeah.
and acceptance is the fifth one that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross teaches us. And her with David Kessler, they came up with the sixth one, finding meaning. And I'll tell you, finding meaning for me was began during COVID. That was what, 2019, 2020. So took time.
Good timing, finding you and continuing down that path. For some of us, and I know we all grieve differently, if that's a true statement to make. We all grieve differently. But what does healthy grieving looks like?
Healthy grieving is being honest about what you're feeling and thinking, and finding individuals that can understand that without them trying to fix it, without them trying to tell you how what worked for them, unless they're open to that advice. We have to ask permission. Hey, can I share what has worked for me?
Yeah.
Right? And healthy grieving is going through the stages, and the stages are not linear. They don't go in a line.
Right.
It's like the waves of the ocean, literally. So there's some waves that come into the shore very slowly. You can see it coming through. And so you're like, oh, today's the death anniversary of my loved one. So, yeah, it's going to be a hard day. But
Yeah.
then there's days that you're just like, maybe you had an event that you were excited about, and all of a sudden the wave of grief just hits you like out of nowhere, and now you're crying, right? And all of that's normal, but it's the process. And allowing yourself to talk or feel is important, because time does not heal.
Right.
It's what you do with the time that heals.
Mhm.
So having a process for your process is healing. Where it gets unhealthy is if we're using substances to help numb our pain or help us avoid the loss, right? If, let's say, we were drinking socially or occasionally, and now it's every day, right?
Yeah.
Relying on something external to get us through the pain. And that's where I would encourage like counseling, or because grief is heavy. It's a heaviness unlike any other condition in my experience and opinion, is that it's so heavy because we love with our whole heart, right? And the the profoundness of how much we love somebody is going to be exactly the way we're going to grieve them, with that
Mhm.
same profound reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just learned something new.
Tell me.
I just learned that we love with all of our heart. And the same way we love is the same way we'll grieve that person. Yeah. So is that to say when we have a loss and we say it's fine, it's okay, and we pretend as nothing happened, are we in denial, or could it be we have already grieved the person prior to losing?
I I love that question, because I wondered about my biological mom. So because I wasn't told that she had died, I knew she was not here anymore once my stepmom began living with us and they started having kids. So then, being brought over to the States and just living life, I would think, well, I've accepted that my biological mother is not my mom,
Yeah.
or is not here anymore. But then there would be life events, like having my sons. Like I was like, man, I wish my mom could be here.
Yeah.
My foster mom was there when the second one was born. And but it's I appreciated it, but it wasn't the same, right? And so I would have the feelings again of, oh, she's she's not here. And I wasn't angry at my mom or her death. I was angry at my grandmother. But in bargaining, I didn't even, because I was so little, I didn't think of like, well, it's my fault she's gone, or I could have done this, or I could have given her more hugs or kisses or something. Like I was a 3 year old, right? Um, Depression, I think I think for me, that was a mode that I had for 40 years, not because I was clinically depressed, but because my heart was just beat up every time that a loss would come. That all I knew was, okay, I'm sad all the time, you know.
Mhm. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. And the reason I asked that question is because I experienced something similar when my biological father passed away. He passed away, I believe, in the year 2000, but I don't believe I started grieving him until the year 2017.
Hmm.
And so I wondered why. Why did it take me that many years to start grieving him?
Hmm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. It takes time, and the process will wait for you. It doesn't go away. It just waits for you. Because when our mom died, our foster mom, she died in 2010, and me and my sister Tiffany, for the first 5 years straight, we would do something fun for her birthday, which is in June, but we would not talk about her not being here. We would just be together. And I couldn't mention that our mom had died. It was like, no, no. All we did was we just hung out together. That's it. That's all we do. It's not until recently, probably the last 3 or 4 years, that I hear my sister mention our mom as having died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you feel? What emotion came up for you at that time? Hearing it for the first time from her.
As a sister, I was happy for her because she, she, she's very analytical, and she's very much in her head.
Yeah.
And so connecting with her heart for that first time, I was like, okay, we're on the right path. She's she's connecting her with her heart. And for me, for that bout of, I say it's 40 years. Now, mind you, I didn't have a loss every year for 40 years,
Right.
but just the processes, which just felt so heavy. It, it's hard to allow people in,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, if I make you a friend, then
Yeah.
I may lose you as a friend, or I may lose you to death. And so it created a lot of like superficial relationships for me for many years. I checked on people, I called them, I did all the things for them, but I didn't let people come into my heart. So I guess with her, I resonated in that way. Okay, you're going to start to feel.
Protection can be healthy and unhealthy.
Say that 1,000 times. Yes.
For those, for those, how do they say it? For those in the back? Prote- Protection can be healthy and unhealthy, right?
So that would be an unhealthy part of grief, right? Is that you don't let people in. I did that, so it's okay, but it's not okay. Please reach out to a therapist or
Say
a
to
friend.
someone, and let me share this example because I overheard someone say to another individual, it's been 4 years since your husband passed away. Why are you still grieving? Get over it. Yeah. How would you address that?
First of all, I understand that that person's wanting to be helpful.
Mm,
And a lot of the things that we want to say are not going to land because we're not the one in their shoes.
mhm,
Even if we've been through something similar, even if we've had the same type of loss, it's individual because the biggest things that affects grieving or, grief is that there's no time ever again that you're going to see them again. So time is a big issue. It Time is relative at that point. Time doesn't matter, right? And then the other thing is location. I can't where yeah, I may go to the cemetery or
mhm,
I may go to the, mausoleum. Like I can do that, but I don't have them, right? And then the third thing is attachment. The role that they played in our lives. Like in that example that you said, your husband's been gone for 4 years. You don't know the quality of the relationship that they had. So you don't know the role that is no longer being filled by anyone else other than that person's husband. So it's insensitive because they are struggling with those three things: time, location, and attachment. So it's like something that's growing. Like, what is it going to attach to now? I want to attach to my husband, but he's not there anymore. So yeah, it's our process, and like we've said, it's not you go through this for this many months and then you're okay, or this many years and you're okay. No, it's okay. Grief does not have an end date. It's and that's the part of finding meaning is that we have to integrate life and death together. Like when I think about my loved ones that I lost, like now I'm able to say, oh, I love my dad's smile. His smile was warm, friendly, jovial, like just extravagant. Like when I think about him, I can think about that. When I think about my foster mom, I can think about her patience because we would always have 9 or 10 kids around the table because she was a foster parent. So I don't know how she had patience. And so I admire that about her. Now, healthy versus unhealthy, I, for a long time, compared my motherhood parenting journey with hers because I'm like, oh my gosh, she set the bar really high. Like, I have to meet it until I think my sister or friend said, like, listen, your journey is your journey. Like, you can be the type of mom you are versus comparing yourself because to me, like, she did it beautifully and she gave her whole heart to it, and that's where I learned the love of a mom again. Like I felt really loved by her, and on one Mother's Day I card I was able to write to her, I think you would the way that you are to me is how I believe my mom would have been to me. Like because she loved me like if she had birthed me. And mind you, I don't think I've said this yet, she was unmarried.
oh,
So she was a single mom raising all these kids.
mhm,
And when I first started living with her in the beginning, we would go to Walmart. We always dressed up on a Saturday and went to Walmart after our day of chores. And people would look at us oddly because we were different shapes and sizes and colors. And her sense of humor was awesome. She said, "Oh, they have different daddies."
yes.
She she had no man talk about they had different daddies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did
So
you,
integrating.
yeah,
Yeah.
at that age though, what did you think about that? What do you,
Oh,
or do you think she was protecting your kids from something?
she was. Oh, now when I think back on our journey with her, like she protected us from a lot, even her own family. Some of her siblings did not care for us foster kids.
Mm,
and they made it we would hear it sometimes, but she would keep us away a lot. We would do our own things. We would visit the family that was receptive to her being a foster parent
right.
because she did just take whoever needed a home,
Mm,
right? And so I mean, we were teenagers, some of them were babies or little toddlers, and so we all held each other. Like I probably learned a lot about life living with her, but she was really protecting us from that. I felt really proud. I'm like, yeah, we do have different daddies.
and I wonder back then, oh, excuse me for saying back then because you're not that old, but
But it wasn't the 90s, mid 90s.
in the mid 90s, right?
Yes, in
There
Florida.
there was a stigma from other kids towards foster kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And adults too, right?
yeah.
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 Like, who's this lady with a bunch of kids?
So she did a great job of protecting you guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone is watching today and is grieving and feels like they will never feel normal again, what would you want them to hear right now?
Let's redefine what normal is. Life will never be
Mhm.
again how it was before, for sure. Like,
Right.
I can never go back to those previous laws, what life was before those losses. I cannot. One, in time and space and relationship. And so it's how do we redefine
Mhm.
what normal is to you now? How do you want to think about your loved one? How do you want to process their death anniversary, their birthday, your anniversary with them? You know, it it's okay that life is different now, but one thing that will stay the same is how you viewed your loved one. So that doesn't go away. You know, the memories are there, the relationship is there. We just carry them differently.
Yeah. And so thank you very much. But before we wrap up, is there any psychoeducation that you would like to provide for our audience that I did not ask?
I'm thinking, I guess I would just encourage that life can have joy again, or you could have joy for the first time, like I'm finding out.
Yeah.
Um, it is possible.
Mhm.
It does take a lot of work because it does require us to face the thing that we don't want to accept. Not yet, not right now, not in a year from now. We don't want to live life without them, and that's okay. But I would encourage speaking specifically to a grief therapist or a trauma therapist, someone that either has more training on that topic or who has the lived experience and training, because they're able to speak specifically to what your heart is doing and what your thoughts are doing. And with that guidance, we can, find a meaning, go through the grief process, find meaning, and integrate our loved one with our present life. It is possible.
It is possible. Thank you very much. And if you're watching this episode and you're experiencing grief, remember, you do not have to travel the journey alone. There's always help, there's always someone, and there's always support. Until next week, this is Moving Forward Talk. And of course, if this resonates with you and if you think you have a story that will impact others, we would love to hear from you. Until next week.